Labeled as rotten apples, sometimes people are born into a world that simply seems to decide to reject them. No guidance, no structure, no second chances. But what if the difference between a life of crime and a life of purpose lies in the simple thing known as bond? Good evening everyone and welcome back to another episode of Nerd Pain Rant, series in which I try to make a creative living out of my 2 degrees in criminology. Today, we are going to talk about a show in which the entire storytelling is moved by the burning desire to prove the world wrong. Stylish and surprisingly deep, today we're talking of course about Windbreaker. After being burned by Tokyo Revenger, I was very skeptical about Windbreaker. I thought I was a little bit too old for an high school-based manga, and that the inevitable class-based drama would have been too much for me. But from episode 1, Windbreaker shocked me, with a narration that flows effortlessly, blended with a stunning animation and an incredible fighting choreography. Windbreaker was able to deliver incredibly heartwarming moments, making the whole show both exciting and meaningful. But what is Windbreaker about? Written and illustrated by Satoru Nii since 2021, Windbreaker follows the story of Haruka Sakura, a teenage boy that, due to his physical appearance and intimidating demeanor, has been facing discrimination for his whole life. Years of isolation and prejudice led Haruka in owning his fighting skills, which he's very proud of. Elements that lead him deciding to enroll into the Furin High School, an infamous institution known for its delinquent students, and home of the so-called strongest high schooler. At Furin, where strength matters more than grades, Sakura arrives determined to prove himself, aiming for the top of the social order. But this expectation gets shattered on day 1, when he realizes that even though it's true that the students enrolled in Furin High School are extremely strong and fight proficient, they aren't merely delinquents. On the contrary, they are the defenders of their community, dedicating their time in protecting their city and helping the residents through acts of service. While hesitant at the beginning, not used to receive kindness and warmth, Sakura gradually learns to open up, while understanding at the same time the importance of fighting for others, grasping for the first time in his life a true feel of belonging. How do we approach Windbreaker from a criminological perspective? Today we are joined by a special guest. Kafka? But before you continue, please don't forget to leave a like, drop a comment, and hit the notification bell. It would be much appreciated. Due to the fact that the main protagonists are young delinquents, it would have been easier for the mangaka to make the narration follow the fundamental core of abandonment and desperation, portraying these kids as simply victims of a neglecting society. Instead, Windbreaker takes a unique and refreshing approach toward the concept of juvenile delinquency. Rather than dwelling on the negative impact of marginalization, it redefines the young delinquents as heroes and protectors of their community. And because of this, for the first time since I started this project, we are gonna explore a theory that explains why people do not indulge into criminal activity. To understand the event narrated in Windbreaker, no theory is better suited than the social bond theory, developed by Travis Hirschi in 1969. Unlike other criminological theories that try to understand the reason why people indulge into a life of crime, Hirschi's theory shifts the paradigm, trying to understand what prevents people to commit a crime in the first place. Hirschi introduced the concept of stakes of conformity. The concept revolves around a simple idea. The more an individual is involved into its community, the lower are the chances that said person will indulge into criminal activity. Because simply too much in terms of relationships, societal goals, and aspiration would be at risk if the law was broken. According to Hirschi's perspective, if an individual had nothing to lose, crime would be a rather easy choice. But what holds an individual back is the fear of the negative consequences. And not just the legal one, but also the moral and the ethical one. The loss of possible relationship or the status in the community and opportunities. The stronger is the bond between individual and society, the more such a bond becomes a barrier to criminal behavior. The bonds are composed by 4 key elements: attachment, commitment, involvement, and belief. The attachment consists in the emotional connection with others, built on mutual respect and trust, revolves around the idea of caring about other people's opinion and expectations. The commitment refers in the investment made by the individual to adhere to a conventional path. Higher is the effort of the individual put into a pro-social behavior, higher will be the risk of losing everything due to commit to a criminal activity. The third element is the involvement, and consists in the amount of time and energy spent into adhere to a pro-social behavior. Higher is the amount of time and energy spent in building a relationship with with the community, lower would be the amount of time and energy left the people could eventually spend in indulging in criminal activities. The final aspect is the belief, and consists in the idea of having a shared moral code and system of values that is based on the importance of rules. Those four elements are deeply intertwined, highlighting therefore how crime isn't simply an inherent feature of the individual, but more a consequence of weak social connections. How do we apply the social bond theory to the case of Windbreaker? Hirschi's idea that bonds profoundly shape behavior is deeply embedded in Windbreaker settings, both Furin High School and the town of Makochi. All the students of Furin High School come from difficult backgrounds, and those that are labeled as delinquents often face societal discrimination, creating a sense of alienation that often leads those individuals to a life of crime and violence. But in the Windbreaker storytelling, something different happens. Those kids don't allow marginalization to define them. On the contrary, take the opportunity to redefine themselves, reshaping their identity and transforming the label of delinquent into the status of protector of their community. But said transformation isn't accidental. The evolution from delinquent to hero occurs thanks to the creation of a strong bond. The deep interconnected relationship that is created between the Furin High School and the town of Makochi allows those kids, often labeled by society as rotten apples, to abandon their delinquent persona and adopt, thanks to positive social acceptation, the role of guardians. And the social bond theory found its most pure and beautiful application in the case of our protagonist, Haruka Sakura. Born with heterochromia and natural split color hair, Sakura has been marked as an outcast and deviant since his birth. Instead of seeing him as an individual, society has been pushing on him the label of delinquent even before Sakura had the chance to define himself. Treated with suspicion and rejected by the peers, assumed to be dangerous due to his appearance, Sakura grew up feeling no desire to prove the world wrong. If the world said that he was a delinquent, why not simply embrace that role? Fighting for Sakura became a defensive mechanism, reinforcing and self-imposing this tough lone wolf persona that it simply had to adopt to survive. Because of that, at the beginning of Windbreaker, Sakura is a student with a high risk of delinquency, rejected, isolated, angry, and constantly looking for a reason to fight. But as the story progresses, we see Sakura undergoing a transformation that doesn't occur simply for external condition or punishment from the law enforcement, but it happens because for the first time in his life, Sakura experiences a genuine connection and feeling of acceptance. We can apply in Sakura's case all the four elements of Hirschi's bond theory, understanding how the creation of a strong and meaningful bond prevents individuals from committing to a life of crime, by giving them something that they could be afraid of losing. The first element we have to consider is the attachment, the emotional connection that is created throughout repetitive socialization. In case of our protagonist Sakura, this process of attachment begins the moment he arrives to Makochi. With no connections and dedicated to his lone wolf persona, Sakura enters the scene with a complete disregard for other people's opinion, used to the fact that nobody cared for him in the first place. But his attitude changes the moment he meets the other students from Furin High School and witnesses them protecting and defending the community, and seeing them being respected, cheered and welcomed by the entirety of the town shatters his previous convention. Though reluctant and confused by his new role as positive member of the community, which is shown by how easily he gets embarrassed when he receives word of praise, Sakura gradually starts to understanding how relevant and important is the role of Furin as guardians for the citizens of the town, igniting in him not only the desire of being accepted, but to not let the people around him down. Sakura is not alone anymore, it's part of a community, and because of that he wants to protect them. The second aspect is what Hirschi defined as commitment, and it consists in the inherent risk of losing what has been built due to the decision of committing a crime. Before his arrival to Makochi, Sakura had nothing to lose. Ostracized and mistreated, he had no connection, and therefore had nothing stopping him from pursuing a life of crime. Society has been treating him as a criminal since he was a kid, so why not simply give them a taste of their own medicine? But once Sakura joined Furin, he finally has a chance to feel that sense of belonging that he has been chasing his entire life. The more the story progresses, the more meaningful are the bonds created among not only his classmates but the residents of Makochi, allowing Sakura in taking the first step in creating its own dimension. Because of that, the achievement of his safe space outweighs any possible temptation toward crime. No law-breaking activity is worth losing what he has finally found. The third aspect is the one that Hirschi defined as involvement, the amount of time and energy spent by the individual in committing to pro-social behavior. While before joining Furin High School, Sakura had no attachment, no long-term plans, besides beating the shit out of everybody that was in his way, he was devoting 100% of his time and energy toward delinquency. But the acceptance that he received from both Makochi and Furin High School changes his perspective. Completely embracing the idea and the role of guardian, he understands the importance of using his own strength to protect the others. Because of that, Sakura now spends all of his time supporting the people and the community around him. Dedicating 100% of its time and energy in defending his newly found community, Sakura not only shows no intent, but no time to dedicate to criminal activities. And the final and fourth aspect is the concept of belief, the conviction that the people around the individual share the same moral and ethical code that allows the creation of a more profound bond. While before his arrival to Makochi, Sakura didn't believe in anything, his encounter with Umemiya changes his perspective. If a person so strong as charismatic as Umemiya, with all the right motivation, means, and authority to become a possible crime lord, decides to use his strength and power to help others, to allow the community around him to thrive, then what is strength actually for? Thanks to that encounter, Sakura understands a new meaning of strength that moves from a self-centered and self-motivated idea of power toward a new perception of strength as an instrument that has to be used to ensure other people's safety. And it is the fundamental core of the shared ideology at Furin that allows the entirety of the high school to become a strong and well-bounded community. The idea that it's moral duty of the strong ones to protect the ones that cannot defend themselves. The social bond theory allows us to understand how important are meaningful relationships, in particular in the cases of individuals like Sakura, that without the creation of such strong bond would have simply be pushed by a neglected society toward a life of crime and delinquency. The creation of strong and powerful bonds allow individuals, even if at risk of delinquency, to understand that there is way more to lose than to gain by committing to a life of crime. And now you have it. You know a little bit more about criminology than 10 minutes ago. And the next time somebody's asking you why are you watching an anime about high schooler, you can always go, actually, Windbreaker does an incredible job in understanding and depicting the importance of creating meaningful bonds, and how strongly based relationship can prevent individuals to commit to a life of crime. But what do you think? Does the social bond theory apply well to the case study of Windbreaker, or other theories could have been applied? Please let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this episode, what we have been doing so far, I want to support me and this channel, please don't forget to leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Moreover, if you want to hear me ranting and screaming on a semi-daily basis, please also don't forget to check the other social media accounts. Thanks again for joining me today, and up until next time, have a nice rest of the evening.